Welcome to our deep dive. This one is going to be fun. We're going to be looking at some episode outlines for a sci-fi comedy
Oh, yeah.
called Doctor Subverter.
Yeah.
And
I love the name.
yeah. And I think a good way to kind of picture it is like if you took Rick and Morty, Hitchhiker's Guide, and then like a dash of Red Dwarf.
Yeah, I can see it.
You're starting to get close
The DNA is there.
to what this show is all about.
It's a fascinating premise. The source material that we have are outlines for 2 episodes, The Birth of Funk and Sketches in Infinity.
Very cool titles.
What grabs me is that these outlines go beyond just like wacky sci-fi adventures. They touch on themes about music and consciousness.
Oh, very cool.
And even like the nature of reality.
I like it.
Yeah.
So in these episodes, we meet our main trio of characters. We've got Dr. Subverter, who is the brilliant but slightly unhinged captain of their ship, the Sadloon of Sanctum.
It's a great ship name.
It is a great ship name. Then there's Silicon Jack, who is his clone, but he's basically like an 80s nostalgia bomb made flesh. And then rounding out the crew, we've got Cyber Subverter, who is another clone, but this one is kind of wrestling with understanding human emotions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff to dig into with these characters, for sure.
For sure. And their predicament is also super intriguing.
Yeah.
They're stuck in a region of the multiverse called the Quantum Doldrums.
Oh, wow.
Which, imagine like the ultimate writer's block.
Oh, I see.
But on like a cosmic scale.
Right. So they can't move forward.
Exactly. You're just stuck. Have you
No.
ever felt like that?
Like creatively?
Creatively or just like in life,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just...
Especially in the multiverse, I feel like it's a very common occurrence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the Quantum Doldrums, but for, interdimensional travel.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's jump into The Birth of Funk. The Sadloon of Sanctum is trapped in these Quantum Doldrums, and all the characters are kind of dealing with it in their own way. Silicon Jack, predictably, is freaking out about the lack of interdimensional pizza delivery.
Classic.
Which, you're facing a cosmic crisis.
Yeah.
I think pizza is a fair priority.
But that's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs right there.
Right.
You got to have your basic needs met
Exactly.
before you can ascend to a higher plane of existence.
But it's the dynamic between Silicon Jack and Cyber Subverter that really, I think, lays the groundwork for the whole episode. Their back and forth is hilarious.
Yeah.
Silicon Jack calls Cyber Subverter putting green face, which I got to admit.
Oh, wow.
That's a pretty good dig.
That is a good one.
Yeah. And I think what I find really interesting is that Cyber Subverter, despite being, this logical machine, actually starts to fire back a little bit.
Yeah.
He points out Silicon Jack's lack of depth perception when it comes to insults. Which,
that's funny.
Yeah, which for a robot, I think is some pretty sharp wit.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's what I find so fascinating. Is Cyber Subverter just mimicking human behavior? Or is he developing a personality of his own?
Yeah.
He's using humor defensively.
Right.
Which is actually a complex social skill.
Yeah.
And so it makes you wonder about the nature of consciousness.
Right.
Even in a machine.
Absolutely. So Silicon Jack decides that Cyber Subverter needs some character, and how better to give him character than through music?
Yeah.
So
makes sense to me.
He first tries introducing him to a Stradivarius.
Nice.
Which
highbrow.
Yeah, a little bit highbrow.
Yeah.
But then he goes to a toy MIDI keyboard called the Nanotone 3000.
Okay, much better. A little bit more accessible.
A little bit more accessible, yeah. And this is where I think the episode gets philosophical, because Silicon Jack believes that music can give someone soul.
Right.
Like it's not just
essential. Yeah, it's essential.
The human experience.
Yeah, it's an intrinsic part of being human.
Yeah.
So they try to have this music lesson, but the ship's computer is down. Oh, no.
So no classics for them.
Tough break.
Yeah. And then, in true Dr. Subverter fashion, he takes over the lesson.
Okay.
And he launches into this whole lecture about the mathematical echo of the multiverse.
Okay, I can see this happening.
Yeah. I love how the writers poke fun at this.
It's like that blend of science and music is always really interesting.
Yeah.
To see how those things intersect.
And they turn it into this almost like musical techno babble.
Right, exactly.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
But it highlights also Dr. Subverter's brilliance.
Right.
But also his tendency to really overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you think that's a way for him to distance himself from other people?
That's a good question. It could be. It could be a way of, masking some insecurities he might have.
Oh, interesting.
Because a lot of times when people like to overcomplicate things,
Right.
they're trying to, like, you know,
Yeah.
obscure their own, like, vulnerability.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because then it's this demonstration that kind of sparks something in Cyber Subverter.
Interesting.
He sits down at the toy piano
Okay.
and starts playing this funky disco tune.
Nice.
And then the ship starts reacting.
Oh, no, wait, what?
The Q drive,
Yeah.
which I guess, think of it like the engine.
Right.
But it's powered by music instead of fuel.
Okay.
It lights up and it starts vibrating with the music.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and they actually represent this visually with, like, a glowing LED cord
Oh, wow.
that's connecting the piano and the console.
I like it.
So it's like the music is physically flowing
Right.
into the ship.
I like that visual
Yeah.
a lot.
It's really cool.
You can imagine that in your head.
It's a great detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the ship is coming alive,
Yeah.
responding to Cyber Subverter's creativity.
Right.
And, of course, Dr. Subverter gets
Of
involved.
course he does.
Plugs the cord into the piano and then into the console. And then the music crescendos.
Here we go.
And the Saloon of Sanctum breaks free of the Quantum Doldrums and blasts back into the multiverse.
Wow, they soured the milk of the multiverse
Love that.
with that sweet disco.
Yeah, it's an exhilarating escape, but it's powered by music,
Right.
which, again, begs the question,
Yeah.
was it just random?
Hmm.
Or is there some kind of link between music
Right.
and, like, the fabric of reality?
That's a great question.
Dr. Subverter naturally tries to explain it all in the epilogue with, of course, a torrent of technobabble.
Of course, as he does.
Silicon Jack calls him out for using what he calls the technobabble word salad spinner, which
Fun.
brilliant writing.
That's so good.
But then Cyber Subverter sums it up perfectly.
Okay.
He says, "We soured the milk."
That's it.
And it's somehow more profound
Yeah.
than anything that Dr. Subverter could have said.
Yeah, I love that. It's like this really smart juxtaposition of highly intellectual science versus just like a simple intuitive understanding.
And I think it highlights this theme that we see sometimes in these outlines, that sometimes the most profound truths are found not through thinking, but through feeling and experiencing.
Right.
What resonated with you most about The Birth of Funk?
For me, it's the humor. It's the sci-fi element, but it's also that underlying message about music and consciousness
Yeah, it's great stuff.
that really gets you thinking. What about you?
That's a great question to ask all of our listeners out there.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. So Sketches in Infinity takes a more introspective turn, where The Birth of Funk was all about action and chaos. Sketches in Infinity kind of slows things down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it really belongs to Cyber Subverter in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
To kind of peek into his inner world
Right.
through these log entries that he's making.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly deep for a cybernetic clone,
It is.
He's trying to understand music with his very analytical mind,
Right.
trying to understand its power and how it affected the ship.
Right. It makes you think about how we as humans process these really complex
Yeah.
concepts, like, what is music? Why does it affect us? How can it possibly
Right.
influence something like, the fabric of reality?
Yeah, and he's trying to grapple with that,
Exactly.
but from a very logical perspective.
Right.
What I find really fascinating is how Cyber Subverter starts observing human behavior,
Yes.
not just data.
Right.
So he watches Silicon Jack and Dr. Subverter
Yeah.
trying to understand why they do the things that they do.
I like that.
And he actually speculates that Silicon Jack's, super over-the-top persona is a survival mechanism for being lost in the multiverse.
That's interesting. I wonder if you've ever felt the need to put on a brave face
Oh, yeah.
when things get tough. Like maybe.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's such a human thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
to kind of deflect.
deflect and distract.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think Cyber Subverter might be onto something because Silicon Jack is constantly trying to distract himself, right?
Yeah.
He's ordering pizza, he's playing his harmonica.
He's performing for an audience that may or may not be there.
And he creates this whole, cyber hacker, biker outlaw persona,
That's great.
which is hilarious, but it's also
A little sad, too.
a little sad. Yeah, there's,
When you think about it.
he has a whole recording setup in the lounge,
Right.
complete with, a clunky camera and all these neon lights.
That's great.
But it's when you realize that so much of it is a facade,
Yeah.
it's kind of heartbreaking. It makes you think about those people that we know in our lives who are always on,
Yeah, it's that fear of being alone with your own thoughts.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And speaking of layers, We also see a whole new side of Dr. Subverter in this episode.
Okay.
Cyber Subverter finds him in the parallax chamber, which is like the ship's holographic environment,
Right.
playing a mournful Baroque piece on a grand piano.
Wow.
And the setting is so vivid. They really describe it well. It's a palatial room that overlooks a garden fountain.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. But there's this charcoal sketch of a woman that's sitting on the piano.
Interesting.
And it's never stated outright, but it's heavily implied that this is someone that Dr. Subverter lost, maybe from his original dimension.
Right, like a lost love or something.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful image because it gives you this glimpse into like his private pain that he carries beneath that scientific exterior.
Yeah, I wonder if he's like, afraid of forming new attachments.
Oh,
since experiencing that loss,
Wow, that's a really good point.
So maybe that's why he kind of keeps people at a distance.
Right.
With all of the,
The technobabble.
the technobabble and the sort of aloofness.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's even more powerful when you contrast it with his behavior in the previous episode.
Right.
He was all logic and science.
Yeah.
But here he is expressing raw emotion through music.
It's interesting how music can do that.
Yeah.
It can kind of unlock things in us.
For sure.
Yeah.
And this scene is really pivotal for Cyber Subverter
Okay.
because it inspires him to continue exploring music.
I love that.
So he goes back to the Nanotone 3000
Yeah.
and he starts practicing. And his melodies, which were hesitant at first, start to become more intricate and more emotionally resonant,
He's getting better.
expressing himself.
It's like he's taking what he's observing from Silicon Jack and Dr. Subverter, this desire for expression, this depth of feeling, and he's trying to channel it through music.
That's a cool idea, that even a being created through logic can be moved by art,
Right.
can find meaning in something that transcends just pure reason.
Absolutely. And I love how the episode ends.
How does it end?
It ends with this silent montage,
Oh, cool.
and each character is kind of lost in their own world.
Yeah.
You've got Silicon Jack, who's watching his own performance, but there's this flicker of doubt underneath all the bravado. And then you've got Dr. Subverter, who's alone in the parallax chamber.
Staring at the woman's sketch. And then you have Cyber Subverter, who's still playing the Nanotone 3000,
Yeah.
just filling the silence with his music.
That's nice.
It's a really powerful, understated ending.
Yeah.
And I think it leaves us with this sense of wondering, like, what are these characters going to do next? What are they going to become? How are they going to continue to cope with being stranded in the multiverse?
Yeah, and I think it also makes you think about how each of them represents a different way of coping with uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
So Silicon Jack seeks distraction.
Right.
Dr. Subverter seeks knowledge and control.
Yeah.
Cyber Subverter seeks understanding through creative expression.
Right.
So, I mean, does that resonate with you at all?
Oh, yeah.
Like how you deal with uncertainty in your own life?
I think when things get tough, I definitely seek distraction,
Right.
What about you?
I think I'm a little bit of a Dr. Subverter.
Yeah.
I like to research things. I like to try to figure things out.
Yeah, makes sense.
But I also have a creative side too. So
For sure.
I think there's a little bit of all three of these characters in all of us.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's what makes it so relatable.
Absolutely. I love that. I wonder how our listeners cope,
Yeah, let us know in the comments what your coping mechanism is.
Yeah, let's get a discussion going.
Yeah.
But, it really highlights the brilliance of this Dr. Subverter show because they blend humor and adventure and philosophical exploration to create something that's truly unique and engaging.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really special show, at least from what we've seen in these outlines.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So before we move on to our final thoughts about the Dr. Subverter show as a whole,
Yeah.
how did Sketches in Infinity make you feel?
I felt a sense of like melancholy,
Okay.
but also hope,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's this underlying sadness,
Right.
but there's also this sense that, things are going to be okay. Did you feel a connection with any of the characters?
I think I connect with all of them in different ways, which I think is what makes the writing so strong.
I agree. I think we all have a little bit of Silicon Jack, Dr. Subverter, and Cyber Subverter in us.
So we've taken this deep dive into the birth of funk and Sketches in Infinity.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm really impressed with how much depth there is.
Yeah, me too.
It's not just a wacky sci-fi comedy, is it?
No, it's so much more than that.
There's genuine heart and philosophy in there.
Yeah, they pack so much into this really absurd premise.
Right.
We got these quirky characters stranded in the multiverse.
Yeah.
They're dealing with pizza cravings and anxieties about, the meaning of life.
Right, like very human anxieties, but
Mm-hmm.
then like also these existential questions.
Exactly. It's like they're trying to figure out what it means to be human
Right.
while also dealing with the fact that they can't get a decent pizza.
Yeah, exactly. And the humor, I think, is like a big part of it, too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so clever and so well integrated into the dialogue.
It never feels forced.
Doesn't feel forced. It feels very organic.
It's just part of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what makes it so effective.
It creates this balance between like absurdity and genuine insight.
Yeah, you're laughing 1 minute and then the next minute you're like, whoa.
Right.
Like, what does it all mean?
Exactly. And the characters, too. We've got Dr. Subverter, the eccentric genius, but with that hidden vulnerability.
Right.
Then you've got Silicon Jack, who's so chaotic,
He's a lot.
but ultimately, like, so lovable.
You can't help but love him.
And then you have Cyber Subverter, who's this logic-driven machine, but he's slowly, like, awakening
Waking up.
due to these emotions into the universe.
Yeah, it's like he's discovering what it means to be human.
Right. And it makes me think that they each represent, like, different aspects of the human psyche.
Right.
And their interactions are just so funny and so thought-provoking.
It's a really great dynamic between the three of them.
Absolutely. And we can't forget the role of music in all of this.
Oh, the music's so important.
It's not just like background noise. It's like a driving narrative force.
It's like another character.
Yeah. It's what allows them to escape the quantum doldrums.
Right.
It's Dr. Subverter's outlet for his grief.
Yeah.
And it's Cyber Subverter's path to understanding his emotions.
It's like music is the key to unlocking all of these mysteries.
Yeah. And it almost feels like it's a metaphor for consciousness itself.
I like that.
It's connecting these characters to something bigger than themselves.
Right, to something beyond the everyday.
So thinking about all this, it brings us back to that big question.
What's that?
What does this fictional scenario suggest about music's power
Yeah.
and its potential influence on, like, reality itself?
That's a big one.
It is. Do you think there's a deeper connection between music and science?
I think there has to be.
Yeah.
Music is based on mathematical principles.
Right. Patterns, frequencies.
But maybe on some level, it really does resonate with the very fabric of the universe.
That's a really cool thought. Because then that would mean that, just like Cyber Subverter's disco tune helped them escape the quantum doldrums,
Right.
maybe music can help us navigate the uncertainty of our own lives.
I love that idea. That music can be our guide.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, these outlines are set in this fantastical world, but they're ultimately reflecting very human emotions.
For sure.
You know, Silicon Jack looking for familiarity, Dr. Subverter kind of retreating into intellectual pursuits,
Right.
Cyber Subverter trying to find understanding.
They're all just coping mechanisms
Yeah.
for dealing with the unknown.
And I think we all do that.
Absolutely. We all have our own ways of dealing with uncertainty.
So if you're out there listening and you enjoy sci-fi comedy, but you also like to think a little bit,
Yeah.
I think you should definitely check out Dr. Subverter if it ever gets made.
You might just be inspired to create your own interdimensional escape tune.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe it'll help you navigate the quantum doldrums of your own life.
Right.
This has been The Deep Dive, signing off. We'll leave you with this. Maybe, like the crew of the Satelloon of Sanctum, we could all find our way through life's uncertainties, not by overthinking, but by tuning into the rhythms and melodies that resonate with our very souls.